Podcast excellence since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network, kingofpodcasts.com.
Which bucket does your last toxic relationship fall into?
We are all a little depraved and debaucherous. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to the program. King of Podcasts here with you. Thank you for being here and listening to the shows you always do. The diverse, wonderful audience that I have here on a regular basis. And I really appreciate all of you jumping in and chiming in on the program, especially those that also find the show on the YouTube channel, which is at King of Podcasts. And I put all my content up there. You can go ahead and find it. And of course, audio version, the initial one, the priority. We like to go ahead and promote that out. It's hosted by my friends at Spreaker. And you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, iHeartRadio, among other places. Now, I want to take a couple of comments that happened in the last couple weeks of episodes, and I want to bring up what was sent to me this week about a couple of episodes. Let's go and take a couple of those we have so far. And so, several weeks ago, we did an episode which was titled Swiping or Sugaring, Seeking Soulmates or Sugar Daddies. And Linus Wilson chimes in and says that Sugar Daddy Dude is a super people-pleasing simp. So sad. Yeah, I know. I am recovering from that. I'm the one that you're referring to, Linus, and I understand where you're coming from with that and how you feel about what I said. I get that part. I'm not disputing it. But I'll tell you what, in my experience of relationships, I just really wish that there was somebody that I wish I could have learned earlier to not try to seek attention that I tried to do when I was in high school and in my 20s. It was a mistake I made. And when you kind of live to grow up that way and you're kind of like attached to that kind of feeling that that's what you got to do, that doesn't go away. That doesn't just erode. But then again, I can't tell you how many times I've known guys that are people pleasers like that. They could just find themselves into a new relationship. But here's the thing too, Linus, is that what I can say is that I never kept myself in that mode for a long period of time, because the most important thing I was trying to do with myself was not get myself to stay in a relationship that was not going to go any good. I could have probably stayed in relationships or made girlfriends work. I know I could have done that. And many other people will do the same thing. But what I know is that there was a toxic element to the relationship that was me. I've been willing to go ahead and confront and face that. So I don't have a problem saying that today and knowing that I did do that. But one of the other things that I also feel like I'm doing right now is that if I am having communications with other women and I feel like I can contribute to the conversation, and when I see that they might have gone through something that's been very traumatic or know that they've had their own issues, I don't think there's anything wrong if I can sense it and they acknowledge it's happening to them. Then I've talked to them about it. When I've done the dating apps, when I've done the websites, it's conversation. I mean, no matter what, I still feel lonely sometimes, and there's got to be a way to fill that void. Hey, maybe I'm not like you, where you can go ahead and like find any girl you want, or you're married, or whatever you are. I'd come tell you, I wouldn't know you from Adam, but you made that point to me. You say it's sad, but you know what? I'm using this show as an experience, and hopefully other men and women out there, younger, will take some of what I'm saying here and hopefully appreciate where I'm coming from with this. Another comment was made on an episode I did a while back, as a matter of fact. Now, this was something I talked about when it came to, I'm going back and trying to figure out when it was that I put this episode out. But this was an episode I did when I did make the switch of the show to Depraved and Debaucherous. This is when in the early onset of the program, when I changed it for When I'm Not Podcasting, and I created a new format of the show. And it was on why trauma leads to a ton of tattoos and piercings. So let me take what a comment was being made out there recently about it that was brought up. Emily Jane 888. Now, by the way, there were a couple of comments that we're talking about with tattoos. I want to bring both of them up real quick while I have the moment, because someone out there Also wanted to go ahead and comment about the fact that I even brought it up. And I said to myself at the time, somebody's going to probably call me out about this. Down the line, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. And so a month ago, someone actually responded back to that particular episode and says it's probably best to look at actual studies before making such claims. This is from Just a Phase, and they sent me this message about a month ago. And then I get a message back from Emily Jane 888. And I think this kind of ties into what I'm going to talk about in the program today about where toxic relationships and how men and women fall into them. And I really feel like from the women's perspective, it's one of those things where I've said it before that I feel like someone will get tattoos because they are kind of covering and trying to go ahead and conceal emotional scars that they felt like have gone through in their experience. So Emily Jane kind of does me a favor and actually comes in and actually explains the issues of why trauma leads to a ton of tattoos. She says, quote, "They have done studies in Germany about the correlation between tattoos and childhood trauma. There's a research article on the internet. If anyone's interested in giving a read, I am someone who's heavily tattooed. I've been getting them since I was 14. I am now 36 years old. One day I kind of asked myself, why did I start doing this? I love tattoos and tribal cultures that have body modifications. However, I did find out what happened to me when I was a kid. I was neglected, and there was sexual abuse amongst other childhood trauma. But I will say I feel deeply that I will always enjoy my tattoos. They are symbols of strength and overcoming the painful things that happened in my life. I also think they may even aid in strengthening the vagus nerve. More studies on people with tattoos and childhood trauma would be very interesting. Also, the act of being tattooed and what effect it has on the mind and body." Thank you, Emily, for that. It's a wonderful point. And so I did pull up the research study that I'm pretty sure Emily was referring to, and it is a 2022 study that brought this up. So for Just a Phase, if you were asking about what was being said, there has been studies out there about it. So here's what we know so far. That there was a 2022 study published in BMC Psychology finding that individuals with a history of childhood abuse and neglect were more likely to have tattoos and piercings. The study found that tattoos and piercings were more common among those who reported childhood adversity. The prevalence of tattoos and piercings increased with the severity of the reported abuse and neglect. And then the association was observed across types of abuse, including emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, as well as emotional and physical neglect. Well, the study definitely doesn't prove causation, which is what Emily's talking about. It highlights a potential correlation that warrants further investigation. Some researchers suggest that individuals who have experienced trauma may use tattoos and piercings as a form of self-expression, coping mechanism, or a way to reclaim control over their bodies. Now, also, we can take that on the other side and say that having tattoos and piercings justifiably doesn't necessarily indicate a history of childhood trauma. Many people choose to get tattoos for various reasons, including aesthetic preferences, personal expression, and cultural significance. Now, this is a great point, because when I've talked about tattoos here on the program, the feel that people need to go and have so much ink on them, I am not discouraging, nor am I downplaying that there are plenty of people out there, plenty of people, and plenty of women that will get tattoos for aesthetic preferences, personal expression, cultural significance. No doubt about that. And good on you. You know, you want to make that trip to the tattoo parlor? Fine. I am not saying you can't. But this is really to the crux of what I've talked about in various episodes. And if you look for that episode, you can find out where I'm talking about that. Because one of the things I noticed in my own research, in my own conversations with women, young women, that they have gone through the issues where the tattoos were because of a history of childhood trauma and trauma experienced in childhood, not necessarily from parents, but from other loved ones, from other family members, or it could be that it was friends or acquaintances or strangers. In all these different scenarios, women that are young and vulnerable, if the parenting structure might be an issue, if, who is a great role model of a father to help nurture and raise a young daughter to, know what a good man's like. That's the part that we're having. And then also that same thing where a man is in a young boy's environment and is there to go ahead and raise him and show him what it's like to be a supporter, a provider, a protector, a lover of women. That's the most important part, is that if there are some young people that do not have that role model, and if it's not a father, if it's not an uncle, if it's not an older sibling, an older brother somewhere, if there's not somebody there that can, exemplify and show that role model and be there for that young woman, that's the part I'm talking about. Because then without that guidance, and also with a mother, if it's hopefully is not someone who's single and is still good knowledge. And we all know that young people are going to be prone to making mistakes, and obviously that happens. But if they can see by example and realize what things are wrong, but then still be able to live their lives and explore and have adventure and do what they want with their lives. But the one thing is that I want to make sure that young women, they get the chance to be a young woman if they have beauty and youth on their side, which there are plenty of young girls that they do get a chance to experience that. But it's part of the thing where it's what you're going through growing up, the abuse or the ridicule or the bullying or whatever it might be, and being able to go ahead and withstand what that is. Being able to realize, okay, don't let that be making you a victim. Make yourself realize you can surpass and overlook what's being said. And one of the things is that when you're in your 20s and your 30s, when you still have a chance, you're still young, you have your beauty and your youth, you can still turn the page and still be able to go ahead and find yourself again, so that you can still go ahead and move along, find a great life. If you want to find a significant other, have children, have a great career, whatever you want to do with your life, you can exceed expectations and you can make it possible. And I think it's just about the right people in your life that can help to do that. The right therapist if you need that, or just the right person that will be there to console you. Not be there to be an enabler and try to hold on to you. And what is going on here, where in this discussion today, one of the areas where women might fall into are abusive relationships, toxic relationships with very toxic men or toxic women. It could go either or. And there was a young lady that was on TikTok that actually brought up an interesting story. And this was back in August that was discussed. I haven't seen a whole lot about it, but there was a woman on TikTok that talked about the bucket theory in dating, explaining how people end up in toxic relationships. And I think this is fascinating. So this is Courtney Shields that puts this together and makes this point. So I want to go ahead and take what she says here and take into account what she's talking about, because I think what she's saying is quite interesting. Courtney.Shields is her handle, and we're going to watch this real quick.
If you're single or even in a relationship, this one's for you. This is what I like to call the bucket theory. I want you to think of dating in buckets, okay? And I want you to imagine that there's 3 different buckets. Bucket 1 are the people that you're just simply not interested in, period, no matter what. That's a bucket 1 person. And you have your bucket 2 people. Now, bucket 2 people can be the trickiest, but I will explain why in a minute. Your bucket 2 person is going to be basically somebody that you like for XYZ set of reasons, but they're missing something on your list or multiple things on your list. So say you have something on your list that's like a mega deal breaker, right? Like this person doesn't want to get married and I do, or whatever. That person is a bucket 2 person because they don't have everything that is like an absolute must essential for you, but you still may end up liking this person, wanting to hang out with them, hook up with them, whatever. Potential situationship can happen in bucket 2, but a relationship shouldn't. Then you have your bucket 3 people. Now, bucket 3 people are the unicorns. They are the people that have everything on your list and appear to be a potential really actually good partner for you, someone that you would want to date. You could bring this person around your friends, you could bring them around your family. Like those are the people that have all the value alignment and everything that you're actually looking for. Now the key here is you have to obviously date these people to see if they could potentially be your person or if they're just a checklist of like shit that you want essentially. But the bucket 3 people are people that actually have the potential to be what you want. Now the key here, and I've done this, is that you can't make a bucket 2 a bucket 3 person. You try to make a bucket 2 a bucket 3, you will get a toxic relationship because you have told yourself, bucket 2 people, okay, we're missing something. There's something that I know I want for sure that this person doesn't have, but I'm trying to put them in bucket 3 anyways. And that's how you end up with a toxic relationship because
now I love where she's going with this. Because I think we all suffer from the same issue that when we find someone, because there is a void that we're trying to fill, especially if you've been single for a long time. Someone like myself, there was a long void of trying to go and fill that relationship. The situationship wasn't going to do it because there's not enough time for it. And of course, like a guy like me, we self-destruct those things because if we find someone that we're infatuated with and we're kind of like getting ourselves fantasizing what the woman will be in our lives without really knowing who she is, but we're just getting this whole mental picture in our heads. I can't tell you how many times where in the chase of finding a woman that is what Courtney's saying, a bucket 2 for a girl, for a guy's perspective, it will be is that there are just things that we're starting to add into the thing saying she checks all the boxes. There's all these things that she has that we're looking for. But also for guys, sometimes it's not even part of that. Is that we just start seeing a few things that kind of just work out. There are those, in a guy's perspective, I would think, that we're just trying to get ourselves there is those that feel like, okay, you want to get yourself to an intimate level with that person, which is just the first phase, the first run of any kind of relationship. For us, we're just trying to get to that point. Now, Courtney's going into a higher level when it comes to actually already having relationships and finding something that you're already kind of finding common ground with, and you're dating, and you're exclusive. It's past 3-4 dates, and now it's become something much more significant. So, intimacy's involved regularly, a lot of interaction, and as she says, you're already starting to incorporate that person into your life around your friends, your coworkers, your family, and all of that. But it's got to be the first thing where you're going to go ahead. In my case, I have to go back and almost at novice level where I'm having to try to just get myself to the point of this. Because for me, I always had the problem just getting to that point. I could have gotten there with other women that I had, but as she says, they were not necessarily what I wanted. They were the first bucket. A lot of first bucket women. And at that time, they might have been something more than that if I would have paid attention. Because one of the things, too, is that being younger was that I also felt like there were appearances that had to be made. I had to make sure that I found somebody that I could bring around other people. There were friends and family that I want to feel comfortable and I feel great and proud of being around. And I wanted to have someone that really understood me and appreciated me, and it was a mutual affection. At least a mutual affection would have been nice, but that wasn't going to happen either. So for me, this is like PhD level above where I'm at, but I know a lot of women and a lot of guys could probably relate and understand where she's coming from when it comes to who you're bringing in. Let's go ahead and let her continue real quick. Another 30 seconds of her talking about where, if you're getting yourself falling into a toxic relationship.
Because now you're with someone that you've been with for a year, but they don't ever want to get married and that was a must for you, or whatever it is, right? That's like your deal breaker things, or absolutely hate their job and you really, really want someone that loves their job. And so they sit and they complain about their fucking job every day. And now you're in a predicament because you tried to make a bucket 2 a bucket 3. Let me know if you guys want a part 2 of this.
Now, here's the thing too. I love what she says here, because I can't tell you how many times I knew of girls that were in relationships with someone that was for more than a significant amount of time, if it was months or a year or a couple of years. Okay. But then it's like, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard about it from all the conversations I've had with women that were with somebody, and you know what? They were the first person they were with. Like, I mean, how many times have you heard about that with a woman who had their high school sweetheart or their first relationship? Because they're going to try whatever it takes to find that one person that made them feel special, that made them feel like this is the person I want. Because it's a couple of different ways. The toxic relationship, when you're getting love bombed like that, and you're getting that whirlwind fantasy romance, something out of a rom-com, then you're saying, oh, what, this is great. Like, let me put it like this. You know, the movie we talked about a while back, that wasn't that long ago, but I mean, when we talked about it, it was significant about the Blake Lively movie and the toxic relationship she had in that movie. It Ends With Us, back in August. Same thing. So It Ends With Us, according to Courtney Shields is saying on her TikTok, that is a bucket 2 guy. All the different boxes checked, but not necessarily the right guy, and not everything, right? And then she was with them for so long that, you know, to take the move forward, get married, have a child, and then you're stuck, and then the toxicity just really comes in and festers. That was the part that's really important here. So I'm telling you, she is totally right on all this. And there were a lot of comments that were made to her about this, that one person said, you make it seem so logical. 3 years with my bucket 2, my bucket 3 came along, but why do I still miss the toxic bucket? Another, oh boy, definitely trying to make a 2, a 3 currently. And another one says, thought I had a bucket 3, but now he's definitely a bucket 2. Seriously, where are the bucket 3 guys? Why are we constantly trying to make bucket 2, bucket 3 people? I mean, you know what? We can be intimidated by those that are ultimately our soulmate, that is the person we're supposed to be with. It's very difficult to go ahead and to realize when you have found someone that really makes you feel that way. It's just one of those things where we kind of miss out and we are not paying attention to who the bucket 3 people are. The people that should be in our lives. And at a young age, like I did, I know I screwed up, guaranteed, on one of them. One of them I've talked about on this program, not too extensively, but I did say that it was somebody that was, if it was marriage material, if there was any one woman that was marriage material for me, there was one I know. And I screwed up. I wasn't ready for it. And that's okay. I mean, better off. Because I would have made things toxic. I know for a fact. I'm not denying that at all. So what do? It's like you got to just think about yourself and just think of the fact and consider what women have gone through that themselves. Because of one of the things I'll tell you that in my experience as well is that I always wanted to be the rescuer. I've said that before on the program. And then I've noticed, and I can sense when I found a girl, because of all the experiences I've had, I found myself going after broken women. I know I did. And I'm sure some of you guys out there, some of you young guys realize you want to be like the rescuer. For some alpha males, they might call you like Captain Save-A-Ho. I got it. Whatever. It's funny. But it's one of those things where we find a girl, and you know, it's something about when you find a girl that is in a bit of is vulnerable, is in a rough spot, in a rough patch, because you notice that when you get to go and talk to her and you know that she's in a bad relationship, then you know that you feel like you have a chance to maybe like help out. It's not for us to go and do because they're in a relationship and, you know, we're not related. It's not anything of our business. But I mean, yeah, you know what? It is tempting to try to go ahead and try to see if we could try to help rescue that woman and help that damsel in distress we look at. Because I've said this before as well. When you find a woman that is in the depths of a very toxic relationship and you can tell she's making the biggest effort possible to try to make the relationship work, no matter how much emotional, physical, mental damage she's going through right now, or even sexual abuse, that there are some women that will go to the deepest ends and will express their love and try to hopefully have, you know, their youth, their beauty, their heart, their passion be just enough that maybe that guy will turn around and that bucket 2 they think would be a bucket 3, that maybe he'll turn the corner and be that bucket 3, and that she'll hold on for as long as she can in hopes that that guy or that gal is going to turn around and make it work. Because it's the hope. It's the fantasy. It's the infatuation. It's the feeling like we've put this time together and I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of being stuck back in that toxicity again, of being alone without somebody to be there to protect me or at least be there for me in some way. But that's the part where if you can find yourself a way to get out of these situations and say to yourself, I got to find myself out. I got to find a way to break free before things become way too severe and no one can help you. And then it's too late and you can't get yourself out of it. Because there are some toxic men and women out there that will bring you into a relationship and then things will get to the point where if they're narcissistic, if they're controlling, if they're abusive, if they're sociopaths and they think, well, they have you in such a vulnerable spot and they can take advantage of you and they can run you through the mill, they're going to hold on to you for as long as they can. They're going to keep you in that state of trauma. They're going to keep you in that state of being a victim and helpless and hopeless and powerless. If they can keep you in that spot, if they have worked their way so far over years of work, of love bombing, bringing you up and down, out of happiness and sadness, light and dark, I'll tell you, it's so important for someone that is in that toxic relationship that it's causing the damage. They're going to do whatever they can to keep that up. And if they can see themselves trying to find a second victim, they're going to try to do that too, or more. But then it gets to the point where what happens if they realize you're starting to try to break away and the threat of you trying to go ahead and split up all the work they did to mentally break you down. And they'll say to themselves, if I can't have you, no one will. We already know what happens in those cases. Those kind of things come across. When I look at some of the young women that are here in South Florida where I'm at, the ones that have come through and I see come out of drug recovery, we never talk about this part, but look, I have also dated some girls that have come out of sober living. They come with a lot of emotional damage, a lot of emotional quirks, things that happen to them. I mean, just the other day I had a couple of passengers in my Uber and it was two young ladies that were there and one guy, and they were in separate, and that wasn't a co-ed facility, but the one guy was coming out, he's in sober living, picking up two other girls to go out. It was to go to, to an outlet mall. They all had their things they were going to go do. And the two women, you could probably tell were very beautiful and, had a certain thing about themselves and were very lively and sociable. And I see the ink that's all across both of them and the damage the drugs have done to them. And knowing that one girl is just a chatty Cathy, just can't stop talking and just has this, annoyance about. I remember that one of them was talking about just getting done baking in the kitchen because it's like those things where you're finding things to do, hobbies or whatever they always kind of recommend you to do in a sober living facility to kind of get you to wean off the idea of that you got to party, you got to do this. Like you got to find something else to do with yourself. Apply yourself into something that's much more constructive in a way. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen young men and women that are just have gone through the gamut that are also in that people-pleasing phase, that have gone through and have been the abused. And we don't look at that and we don't recognize the fact of how much abuse they've gone through and why they had to go into alcohol or drugs or doing things to harm themselves that led them into having to go and find recovery, find therapy, find relief, find some way to overcome what has brought to them any addiction or any kind of trauma they've gone through, whether it's through therapy or whether it's through other various recovery means. And I see it more and more every day. And I feel like there's a thought that when there are young men and women, especially young women, really doesn't matter anymore about how young they are. If they get parental consent. I can't tell you how many young girls I see when I go to the mall that I go to all the time, walking around it, people watching, and how many young women are going in for the first time to go and get their first tattoo or piercing, whatever it is. Fine. But it's like you could tell that there's certain people that there's a reason why they're doing it. That is not for aesthetics. It's not for cultural significance or the like. It's because it is something to go and control, it's almost like a clarion call to their trauma. Now, I'm not saying this for everybody, but how many girls do you know that you find them wearing a septum piercing after a while that you have never seen that before? I think in many cases that is at least a clarion call of depression. Now, I'm sure as I do this program right here, more comments will come along. I'm just putting this out there in the forefront. But I would love to go ahead and get comment out there. I'm putting this point. I'm looking at what research and what experiences I've had in personal contact with women and with young guys, and knowing why they do what they do. And the significance of what tattoos are, because it is a visual coping mechanism in some cases for some women. Like, we've seen a lot of guys that always had tattoos all their life, but to see women now going to the point of adding so many, and it's not even the matter that there's really real rhyme or reason. I mean, that's not like all of them are looking like Kat Von D that would have like a particular set and it's like a whole rhyme and reason of what they're doing. When I see some young woman that I see that, well, they might have gone through the trauma they've gone through. One of the things you also make a notice is that if a woman, they lose their beauty in your youth and they're kind of letting themselves go, whether it's from binging or overeating, or whether it's, doing things to modify themselves, cut the hair, change the looks, go to something that's much more, that's not as an expression, but it's more of trying to go ahead and conceal or just create a new disguise of who that woman is. And the natural, blessed, God-given beauty and looks and personality and charm that you were born with. And when you start trying to make significant changes, you got to ask yourself, how much does trauma play into it? But I always said that, there's one thing about, there was always a time where obviously some women will always go ahead and make change because it's a rebellious period. Just start making changes and obviously just go to it. But there's still something to be said about women that are still, they see their natural beauty, their youth, their vitality, their exuberance, their personality, their charm, and who they are. Everything that we love about women. But then when somebody does something to take the innocence, take the essence, takes away and takes apart the heart, the soul, the mind, the body that is that young woman who did something to abuse that or tarnish it or scar that woman for all of her life. Or maybe it's a scar that can be repaired and restored. And that's where I hope this program comes to, because I think there's something about that where, look, for some people, that's fine if you want to go ahead and, do what you want to do in terms of the ink that you put on and the relationships that you get into. You hope that you're smart enough and you're adept enough to realize when there are certain people that you don't want to have in your life, you get to have your choice and the joys of the choice. But you also want to make sure the choices that you make are from a confidence standpoint, that you realize who you are. And I'm saying to young women out there, you look at yourself and just say, you experience and you realize who you are and know that you can have beauty, you can have talent, you can have an expression, a look, a personality that just stands out. But I want you to not be abused or tarnished or victimized on the way to growing up, living life, and doing what you want, which includes being depraved and debaucherous.